Hey everyone, so thank you for joining us today on this premiere edition of First Comet, which will be a series on FOSS contributors uh, brought to you by FOSS United. So, if you are joining us through YouTube, that's live and streaming right now, you could hop over to our Big Blue Button session, and the link to that will be shared very soon on the chat screen. So, this could be some opportunity for you to interact with our speaker today and yeah, I don't think I'll be joining through video right now because of a unforeseen situation here, but otherwise we have with us our speaker Goutham, who is a contributor maintainer on two CNCF projects, that's Prometheus and Cortex, and he is also an engineer at Grafana Labs. So I'd like to hand over to Gautam to do a small introduction of his own. Gautam?
Yeah. Can you hear me? I guess I'm going to take
Yes.
that. Yes. Okay. Cool. Hello, everyone. I am Gautam. I'm a senior software engineer at Grafana Labs. Yes. And as Dev mentioned, I am the maintainer for Prometheus and Cortex. I used to do a lot of work on Prometheus, but at Grafana Labs, we use Cortex heavily to power our hosted Prometheus service. And I'm also the tech lead for that service. So basically, most of my time these days is spent working on Cortex and also the hosted version of Cortex that we offer. Yeah. And in my free time, I used to bike a lot, but it's really cold here in Berlin. So I started baking recently, and I think I perfected finally my pizzas. Yeah.
Great to know that as well. Okay, so to get started with our session today, I think it'll be great to go through an introduction of your journey as a contributor, how you got started with FOSS projects, or rather how you got exposed to them and how you started contributing. Yeah.
Yeah, for this session, I've been thinking about like how basically I got started, and there were a lot of questions about imposter syndrome and how to get started in FOSS. And reflecting on my journey a little bit, I'm going to start from the very basics. So I got admitted to a good college, IIT Hyderabad, and like between giving all these plus one, plus two exams and starting college, there's like a 2 or 3 month break where I was really bored. So I was like, why not try to get a head start? Why not try to learn how to code? I never coded. We had a computer at home, but basically I've never coded. So I was like, okay, let me try to learn how to code. And I went online and I searched for resources. And I found this resource called CS50 by Harvard. It's basically their introductory computer science course, which they recorded and put online. And I started following that. It was very popular back then. I'm not sure how popular it is. But I basically only learned a little bit. Come on, these are holidays. So I basically learned C, and in C, like functions and variables. Yeah, more or less, I learned that. Did a couple of assignments, and then I went off. Like then I got bored of it, I guess, and then I went to college. In college, we were being taught the same stuff, but I had the advantage of already understanding the basics when that happened. So that's basically how I got started into coding. And then somebody told me that Python is much more fun than C. So I learned a bit of Python. Somebody told me, why don't you play with some hardware? So I bought a Raspberry Pi and I started lighting up stuff, shorting out LEDs because that was fun and LEDs were cheap. Um, so basically, that was happening for about 6 months, where I was just basically just playing around with different things. And one of the really good things that, I mean, IIT Hyderabad got a lot of good things, right? But one of the really cool things is IIT Hyderabad has this concept of independent project at the end of first semester. So the idea is they'll put you into random teams, and you're supposed to build something cool. And they give you a budget, I think, of 7,000 rupees. So you can do whatever with this budget. But at the end, you have to present your project to everyone. And yeah, so a bunch of us got together. We were like, let's reinvent chat. And we had some audacious ideas. And as you know, what happens with college projects, there was like a 3-month deadline. And for 2 months and 2 weeks, we basically did nothing. And then with 2 weeks left and the deadline looming, we kind of freaked out. So we were like, okay, let's try to see what we can do to impress our professors. So this is when I saw my first open source project, which was a library basically put out by this company called wit.ai. If you plug that library onto a Raspberry Pi with a microphone and you speak into it, it gives you answers. For example, you can basically train a light with two states, on and off, and then you can give some input to this wit.ai saying, okay, I want it on means you reply with on. I want it off means you reply with off. I want light means you reply with on. So you do a little bit of basic training, and after that you can ask any random questions, and it gives you on and off with a probability. So this was back in 2014, and this was like when AI and deep learning was taking off, and this was really cool. So I basically ran that open source program on my Raspberry Pi, and it worked. So people could say, hey, good morning, and the light used to turn on, or good evening, and the light used to turn off, or like, oh, I'm home, I'm out of home. All of that used to work. And we basically made that open source project, which is an example repo from wit.ai showcasing their service, as our independent project. But we wanted to do a little more. So I started playing around with that example. And turns out the example was in Node.js. And I just knew C and Python. But turns out I have this funda. If you want to learn a language, you basically need only three things. You need functions. I mean, you need first variables, how to declare variables, conditionals, how to write if statements, loops, for statements, and while statements, and then functions. If you know how to do these, you basically know how to program in that language. So I basically was like, okay, let me look up some JavaScript tutorials. And I looked at the JavaScript. I learned JavaScript basically in 6 hours, because all I needed to do is variables, conditionals, loops, and functions. And then I made some slight modifications to this open source program, showed it off as my independent project, used the 7,000 budget on this Raspberry Pi and this microphone and this small light and stuff. All of that was great. It was working amazing in the hostel room, but then we had to give a huge demo in this huge hall where everyone else was also presenting their projects. So the audio quality was messed up, and the demo basically didn't work when the professors came around. Having said that, that's basically how I got started with my first proper language. I would say, like, first language that I did a lot of work in, JavaScript. Yeah, so that's basically how I got started. And after that, something very interesting happened. So one of my seniors, he noticed that I was like, what I did was really cool. This demo, when it worked really well. It was impressive, even though I basically downloaded everything from GitHub and ran it on a Raspberry Pi. He was like, hey, you seem to be knowing how to code. I'm like, of course, I know exactly how to code. And he was like, why don't you build me an e-commerce website? I want an e-commerce website. I'm like, okay, I can build you an e-commerce website. I need to figure out how much to charge you though. So basically what I did was I opened Google and I'm like, how to build an e-commerce website. And DigitalOcean, they still have amazing tutorials. Back in 2014, they had an amazing collection of tutorials already. I really, really love DigitalOcean. I've been a customer of them for, yes, basically since 2014. And they had this amazing tutorial on how to set up PrestaShop, an open source e-commerce platform. So I basically followed their tutorial, used my dad's credit card to sign up on DigitalOcean, got $5 as credit, and I set up a PrestaShop website. It worked, basically did what it was supposed to do. There were a couple of open source themes. I downloaded a couple of open source themes, plugged it in, uploaded a few products, and I'm like, hey, your e-commerce website is done. and I basically charged them 3,000 rupees to set up this website, and 300 rupees per month to run it, $5 a month. And basically they were really happy, and I was suddenly really cool, because all I did was until that point either copy GitHub code or copy a tutorial from DigitalOcean. And then they asked me, hey, I want Facebook login for this e-commerce website. And I was like, okay, let me Google how to get Facebook login in PrestaShop. So there were a bunch of plugins, but each plugin was like $60 or $80 just for Facebook and Google logins. I was like, no, this is ridiculous. Why should such a basic plugin, something as obvious as Facebook login, cost $60? But I didn't want to learn PHP, and I wanted to learn how to code more in JavaScript because I really like Node.js. So I was like, okay, what are the open source e-commerce platforms in Node.js? Back in 2014, there was only one. 0 people were using it. One person was working on it for, I think, for like 3 or 4 years. It was called Reaction Commerce. And I was like, okay, now this PrestaShop website exists, and over the next 3 or 4 months, I will contribute to Reaction Commerce, and I will convert this PrestaShop website to Reaction Commerce. It's also an open source e-commerce platform. You can also run it. You can also run it on your. You can also run it on your servers. It basically kind of sort of worked. There were a lot of bugs. There was not enough payment gateways for India and all of that. So I started contributing to this. The funny thing was, here I was, where basically I did like 6 hours of JavaScript, a bunch of copying from GitHub, and I'm trying to contribute to this Reaction Commerce service. Never done Node.js, no clue what was happening. So I was like, okay. I jumped onto the Gitter chat with that person, and he was like, why don't you fix this very simple issue? This thing is erroring. I was like, oh, this issue should be simple to fix. I still remember I spent, I think, 4 hours or 5 hours figuring out where to insert a comma, because I had no clue what was happening. I fixed a bunch of commas that way, or like very trivial issues where I took 6 or 7 hours to do it. Was really frustrating, but that first PR you submit gives you a nice boost. I really like that, and I kind of altered my sleep schedule a lot so that I can work with Reaction Commerce. So I used to basically wait until 7 p.m. And that 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. was when Aaron from Reaction Commerce, he used to wake up, and I used to ask him like a huge list of questions. He used to patiently answer those. I used to work on them until like 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, and then sleep. I had one more advantage from IIT Hyderabad, which is basically we don't have an attendance policy. I didn't need to attend most of my courses. So basically stopped attending classes, which was both good and bad. We'll get to that. And yeah, so I was contributing to Reaction Commerce for, I think, 4 or 5 months at that point. I had no clue how to write tests. I had no clue how to write code. And this one person, Aaron, has been super kind to me. And he explained all my questions. He explained me what tests were, how to write tests. And I'm like, why would you why would you put yourself through the pain of writing tests? Why don't you just ship code? Now I know why. But back at that point, first year, 1 semester into college, I was completely like, what is this testing thing? This sounds like so much pain. Why do you do this? It's important. If you want to make your code work for years and years together without breaking, and if you want to confidently add more code to it, tests are needed. But yeah, I basically scratched my head a lot. I couldn't get it, but to get my PRs merged, I needed to write some tests. So I wrote a bunch of tests. I wrote a bunch of plugins. I think I wrote the Razorpay plugin for Reaction Commerce and stuff like that. And I was absolutely in love with Node.js and JavaScript. Yeah, so that's basically how I got started. Any questions so far, Devdutt? Anything you want me to clarify here?
Not exactly, but I think all of this really resembles a lot of others' stories as well when it comes to FOSS contribution. Even I have some experiences like this, and yeah. So We have a question here, but it's not exactly the same as what we were discussing right now. But I'll just uh,
Hmm?
ask that to you. So that's a question. It's about familiarity with the languages and familiarity with the frameworks that are necessary to like contribute. So it goes. So, when you're interested in contributing to OSS projects, but the tech or level of complexity is a bit out of reach in terms of your current skill levels, how do you skill up? An example of a Golang project for new Golang devs, and how do you move from documentation or maintenance to code-based contributions? So, could you like do that?
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I can take that. So I will tell you this. Okay, the way to kind of do this is to spend 6 hours fixing a semicolon. I'm not even kidding. Pick. So they're gonna tag these issues as easy first issue or help wanted or first time contributor only and stuff. And then you go there. If you don't know the framework or if you're not familiar with doing similar projects, you are not going to have any clue what's happening there. So what you're like, first thing I would suggest is run the program and then understand, okay, this easy to fix issue has to do with, for example, in the case of e-commerce, whenever somebody opens a product page, like there's a home page, you click on a product, you open the product page. So what I used to do is, first I used to try to understand that code. So as my favorite debugger is console.log lol, form.println lol, and then there's, once I used lol, I'll be like lol ol, lol ol ol, so on. I put all these weird print statements everywhere, and I used to go from homepage to opening product page, homepage to opening product page, homepage to opening product page, and then I used to try to understand what's happening there. And once it'll take you, like, I'm not even kidding when I say I spent 6 hours. I spent 6 hours of focused time. But back then I was in college. I think this was like the holidays after the first semester or something. I didn't have a lot of work to do, and I could spend these 6 hours trying to figure out what's happening in this product page. And to be honest, I don't think there is any other way around it. At least for me, I don't feel like, I don't know any other way around it other than like basically pick an easy issue. It's, they say it's easy because they know how to do this, but it's not. If you don't know what you're doing, it's not. But like, spend 6 or 7 hours trying to understand what's happening there, and pick something small. Don't pick something that will touch the entire project. Pick a very small feature, a very small thing, and keep running it. Put your own print statements, use a debugger, whatever you're comfortable with, and try to understand what's happening in that code base, or in that single file, or in that single function. It depends on the complexity of the project. And once you kind of figured out, okay, what's happening, and then you will start to understand, okay, so this is what they want me to fix. So when they say the rules are not executing, okay, this is what they mean by the rules are not executing. Oh, all I need to do is add a log function here, or like all I need to do is change this to greater than or equal to instead of greater than. So to get to that realization where the change will be very tiny, 2 or 3 lines, but to get to that realization, it will take you hours. I would say don't get discouraged. I've done this a couple of times. Even when I try to deal with new projects now, it still takes me hours to make a 2 or 3 line change. Most recently, I contributed to Jaeger. I knew a lot of Golang from Prometheus. I did a lot of Prometheus, a lot of Golang. It still took me, I think, 4 or 5 hours to change 2 or 3 lines. That happens with every new project. Don't get discouraged. Spend those 6 hours, and after you spend that 6 hours, you will start to understand two things. You will start to understand, okay, which features are where in this code base, which features live in which files. Second, how is the code structured? Like what, like how are they commenting, things like that. You basically spend 6 hours reading the same piece of code again and again and again, and you start to understand, okay, so these are the best practices these people are following. And then you submit a PR to do this, and yeah, if it's a 2 or 3 line change, it will get fixed. Do two of these easy issues. Spend these 6 to 12 hours just doing two or three of these easy issues, and then go to the maintainers and say, hey, give me like something slightly harder. I've been doing this, I've been enjoying this, give me something slightly harder. And yeah, so they're going to give you something slightly harder, spend 6 more hours figuring it out, and slowly you'll get better and better at it, and you'll be able to pick up normal GitHub issues. To go from not knowing anything, picking up the easiest of issue, struggling with it, scratching your head. Of course, when I say it's going to take you 6 hours, sometimes you're going to be so lost that you're going to be like, okay, you spent 3 hours on it, you're going to be so frustrated, you're going to throw your laptop away and then come back the next day, and you're going to be so frustrated again because you're not able to figure it out. Then go ask the maintainers, hey, I'm trying to fix this issue, and these are all the things I've tried, I still don't understand what's happening in this particular part. So when you ask such a long and expressive question to the maintainers, they will be like, okay, this person really wants to contribute, this person struggled a lot, and this stupid piece of code that I wrote is really complex. So they will feel bad, and they'll come and explain it to you what's happening. So when I say struggle, don't struggle alone, struggle for a few hours and then ask the maintainers for help. Pick up the easiest of issues and then go to a higher complexity. And a month, if you're completely new to a framework, completely new to a language, I would say it would take you a month for you to be able to pick up an issue from GitHub and fix it on your own. But you need to go through that to kind of gain that confidence. I hope that was useful.
Yeah, that was. I have another question that just popped up very recently, like when we're talking about Golang and Node and C and all those languages that you have. Like, I think there's a problem that's come up very often in my own experience, and that is knowing a language too much or knowing a language too little. So, what kind of experience is necessary, or rather, enough to work with FOSS projects such as Prometheus or Cortex or etc.?
Good question. I'm gonna answer Prometheus. Same thing applies for Cortex. Cortex is a little more complicated, mainly because it's a distributed system. But let's stick to Prometheus. If you can do Prometheus, you can also contribute to Cortex. So my funda, I don't think this applies to Rust, basically because I've tried to learn Rust and failed at it a couple of times. My funda is, you know a language if you know how to declare variables, how to write if conditions, for loops, functions, and packages. How to handle, like how to import packages, how to create packages, how to download them and use them and stuff like that. So all you need to do is learn these 5 things. And for every language that I try to learn, there's this, like for me, let me open this up. And so there's this thing called go by example. I really enjoyed learning Go from this. Putting it in the chat here, it's called Go by example. Because it was like, first thing, it's going to be like hello world, then it's going to teach you variables, constants, for, if else, range, I mean like functions and stuff like that. So basically whatever I wanted to learn, it did it step by step with an example. And when I first started contributing to Prometheus, or like no, I started learning Go because I wanted to use an API of Docker for something. And when I first started to do that, I was like, okay, I have no idea how to do this. But I wrote the pseudocode down and I was like, okay, every time, okay, how do I declare a function? Go by example, click on functions chapter. How do I declare a for loop? Go by example, click on for chapter. How do I do this? How do I declare this particular struct? Go by example, go to structs. So basically have this documentation ready, and more than anything, have the confidence that you can do this. Learn that all you need to contribute is these 5 constructs. Of course, like the first time you're trying to do this, it will take you 5 hours to do something in a new language, compared to doing it in the language that you're comfortable might take 20 minutes. But like, you don't need to be an expert at a language to start contributing. You just need to kind of have the confidence that you can learn it. And as you start doing more and more of this, you will start referring to this documentation, whichever website that you prefer, less and less. And after some point, you get to the same level of confidence, and I would say comfort with that language. But I would say, like, if you want to learn a language, have one language where you know how things work, and from that start thinking, okay, how do I declare variables, how do I declare if statements, how do I declare for statements, functions and packages. That's basically all that you need. Does that
Awesome.
help? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Another question that might also come up for most of us here is that when it comes to solving problems, okay, like asking a maintainer about a certain component, or rather about how to fix the issues, and sometimes it gets to gets to your head that you're asking a person a question one again and again, as you had told us earlier about Aaron. So what would be the way to gauge your maintenance to
um
answering questions?
so you cut out a couple of times there. I don't know if it's just me, but let me rephrase the question. So essentially you're asking, sometimes you start you basically start to contributing to a project, and you start asking maintainers questions. And I would say this is imposter syndrome, but like sometimes you start feeling, am I bothering them too much? Is this the question? How do you deal with this? Am I bothering them too much feeling?
Exactly, exactly. I think you should cover how to get over the imposter syndrome and how to feel the confidence to do the contribution.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I would say maintainers of open source projects are busy people. And what happens is, if we find, okay, so we want to help you use our projects and use our code, we absolutely want to do that. But more often than okay like more often than not, the contributors are great, but sometimes the contributors that come in, they don't put any effort into figuring out what's happening. They're like, okay, I want to work on this issue. We're like, okay, great, go work on this issue, here are the files. And then they come back, okay, what do I do in these files? And they start asking for questions at every single step. And this is actually quite rare. Most people who contribute, actually, we want to help you. um, but like, just to get over this feeling that, am I asking for too much? First thing I would say, before you ask a question, struggle for 30 minutes to an hour. Like, try to put as many print statements, try to Google as much, struggle for 30 minutes to an hour. And then when you write a question to the maintainer, say, okay, hey, I've been trying to achieve this, and I've been looking at this file, which I think is the right file, for the last 30 minutes. And I've tried this and this, and I'm still not able to understand what's happening in this file. So if you kind of say, okay, here's this is me, I'm trying to achieve X, and I've put in the effort Y, and I'm still not able to figure it out, we would basically be ready to jump on a call with you if required. And we would like basically help you out, figure out why that is, and or refactor things to make it simpler. Because we are like, okay, if this person, after spending 30 minutes to an hour, is still not able to move past this small thing, then something is wrong in this file, or this, it's too complex, or I wrote something wrong, or maybe this is not the right file. So I would say, instead of asking maintainers directly every small question or for small help, put some effort in, and then explain your effort, like explain everything that you've tried and why it failed. And then, like, you don't need to write huge paragraphs of stuff. It's like, okay, I've tried to do X according to Stack Overflow, that didn't work. I tried to do Y according, like, two or three things that you tried, to kind of show that you put in some effort. And if you do that, the maintainers would absolutely love you, because they're like, okay, the first thing I'm going to tell you is to try X and Y, but they failed, so let me see what's happening here. So, like, I would say, yeah, before you ask maintenance questions, put some effort in, and then ask that question, and then the maintenance would be more than happy to help you. um, Regarding imposter syndrome, like it's a real problem. Uh, I faced it a bunch of times in my life. But basically, what I did was I picked one small issue and tried to make headway. And every small issue that you fix, no matter how small, no matter if it's a semicolon fix, no matter what it is basically going to give you that boost that you can pick up one more, you can pick up one more, and you can pick up a bigger problem. So I would say, don't try to tackle the most popular or the most cool problem in that project, because it might take you 3 weeks to get that thing merged, and by that time, like, coding and debugging is a lot of frustration, you know. All software engineers know this. And like 3 weeks of frustration before you get a win is not going to help you. Like, you'll probably give up before that. So I would say, if you feel like, okay, this project is too complicated, pick up the easy issues and start slogging for a day or two on these easy issues. Sometimes it might take a week to fix this easy issue, but like every time you fix an issue and it's merged, you get a huge boost. So I would say, yeah, start small, put some effort in before you ask the maintainers.
Wow, that answers a lot of questions. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm trying to process a lot right now because this is very, this resonates very well with my experiences as well.
Yeah. So like, before we take more questions, I'm gonna cover the second half of my journey. I would say. So this is. I hope that's okay.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
yeah, so essentially now I was doing reaction commerce. I was in the community. I was helping the community. But the weird thing was, turns out selling on Amazon is much easier. You get a lot more people looking at your products than having your own e-commerce shop. So that person decided to not focus on the e-commerce shop anymore. And converting, or like, reaction was still in very early stages. Productionizing a reaction shop was too much work, required a lot more resources. They were running Meteor JS. You need a MongoDB and all of that. So I kind of slowly started losing interest in it, basically because I had no use case for it. But I learned a lot. And I started doing some hackathons, and somebody at that hackathon came up and said, "Hey, do you want to work on this cool new startup that I'm working on? Like, I see that you can code. I see that you contributed to Reaction Commerce and stuff." So that was how basically I got my first job, contributing to open source. I contributed to Reaction Commerce. I told people I contributed to Reaction Commerce, and I showed them the contributions. They're right there on GitHub. And somebody was like, "Okay, this here's a guy who I can use for my startup." And turns out I was the first guy he hired for the startup, and I was the only guy writing some code. So I built a bunch of APIs. We tried launching a couple of times. None of that really took off. But like, yeah, I was getting paid for my code for the first time, for the code that I write, not the DigitalOcean tutorial that I copied. That was really fun. And then I applied for an internship at one of the companies that one of my seniors was working at, and I got that internship. It was in Bangalore. I was supposed to do a lot of Java. I did basically zero Java before, but I was like, sure, all I needed to know was functions, variables, and all this stuff. And then came classes, and I'm like, what are these classes? That was confusing. It still is confusing. Um, I looked up a couple of tutorials, and I kind of sort of understood what classes were. I was like, okay, maybe I can do this internship. But luckily, in the internship, most of the classes and design was done, and I had to implement functionality in functions, for which I just basically needed how to call functions, variables, and loops. So I was doing a bunch of Java there, and they were doing some very weird stuff. So basically, they did not have a monitoring system, and what they were doing was, like, whenever they had some errors, they used to basically SSH into their machines and grep the logs on that machine for errors. And they had 300 or 400 machines, so there's no global grep. So they used to SSH into one machine and hope the error exists there. And I was like, this doesn't sound like a great idea. And then customers used to complain, and then they used to go and SSH into the machine. There was no alerting. It's like, let me try to add some monitoring into this startup. And I was like, okay, let me try to add some monitoring. And I was like, okay, open source monitoring systems, because at that point I realized I kind of want something open source. That's basically where I've been learning a lot, and I'll have a chance to contribute and learn more. And InfluxDB and Prometheus came up, and I did a spike of Prometheus and InfluxDB. Both of them were like 0.9 and 0.8 and stuff like that. And for some random reason, I was still in my second year, I think. This was right after second year. Yes, this was right after second year. I did not have a lot of experience. So I wrote pros, I wrote pros, I wrote cons, I wrote cons. And I'm like, I had to pick, and I had no clue how to pick something. And the startup actually didn't care too much about like this monitoring stuff. If they cared, they would have implemented it themselves. They're like, pick whatever, we don't care. So I randomly ended up picking Prometheus for some reason. And that like I implemented Prometheus. It failed a bunch of times. Like it was crashing in all kinds of weird ways. And I jumped on to the community, the Prometheus IRC. First time I was using IRC. And I asked a bunch of questions. They were more than happy to help me out. I really enjoyed that experience. I fixed them. I finally wrote alerting, alerts, and all of that for the company. All of that was working really well. And then I left, and I don't think they use Prometheus anymore because I did not document anything. That kind of sucked. But basically, I had a really good experience with Prometheus and the community. Then I went back to college because of a few reasons. I basically got really involved organizing my college fest. For 6 to 8 months, I did not write any code other than the assignments and stuff. So that was really frustrating. And at the end of the college fest, I was like, I want to write some code, and I was like, let me try to find an open source project that I can contribute to. And then GSOC came around, and GSOC had CNCF in it, in which there was Prometheus. Like I went through the entire list of GSOC, and I knew one project in it, which is Prometheus. I was like, okay, I had a good experience with Prometheus. Let me contribute to Prometheus. So I started writing my first serious Go code, and I picked up a very, very easy issue. I had one advantage I had was I've run Prometheus before, so I know kind of what features are there in Prometheus, and what like whenever I read an issue and that issue says, okay, the rules does not print this particular error. I knew what the rules were. I knew what the particular error was. So when I read an issue, it was kind of easy for me to understand what's going on there. I did not know anything about the code, but like at least I could read the issue and understand what's happening, or what was going wrong. So that's one huge advantage that I had, which is basically I decided to contribute to a project, but I've used that project before. If you are new to it, you would have to run the project. You would have to understand what monitoring was. And you would have to basically understand why rules existed and all of that. So like, yeah, so if you're looking for a new project to contribute to, try to contribute to a project that you are using, that has a great community, and that you are using, because then it'll be a slightly simpler process. But anyway, so I picked up this one particular issue. I submitted a PR for it. Coming from a huge JavaScript land, my Golang code looked like JavaScript code. So they're like, okay, you can. So they were really nice. So they sent me a huge list of changes that I could make, and I'm like, oh wow, all of these changes make a lot of sense. I rewrote my PR, and then they sent me a second set of changes, and I rewrote my PR again. So I had to rewrite my PR 3 or 4 times for it to get merged for the first time, and every iteration was better. And I was like, huh, this is a little crazy. I thought I can write code. Turns out I had to write it 3 times for it to get merged. So that was a little disappointing. But the community was really nice, and they were like, it has nothing to do with you. It's basically how we expect our project's code base to look like, and we want you to follow our best practices. And that is something that you will learn. You might be doing a lot of Rust code or Golang code, but every project has its own best practices, has its own um, rules of thumb. Like for example, Prometheus says all the comments should end with a full stop. There should be full statements and stuff like that. So, or like the code structure would be different. Don't be discouraged. The first time you're contributing to any new project, the first PR will always be like, okay, here's 25 changes we want you to make. But from the fourth or fifth PR, you will automatically adjust your mind to how they expect the PR to be. So then it'll get easier for you to merge code, merge changes. But anyways, so I fixed a couple of small issues. I started picking up like slightly larger issues, and I was very active on their IRC. And I used to talk with a lot of people. And then one of the developers from Prometheus pinged me saying, "Hey, I know you want to do GSOC, and I'm doing this new version of the storage engine. Do you want to contribute there?" And I'm like, "Okay, this is okay. Prometheus is a time series database. Okay, before I get to this, let me explain what Prometheus is. Prometheus is a monitoring system. What it does is it collects data on how your applications or infrastructure is running. For example, you can install Prometheus on your local system and you can use it to monitor whatever you want. For example, how much RAM are you using? How much CPU are you using? How much disk space is left? So you can collect all this information. You can build beautiful dashboards with all this information, and then you can alert on this. You can write an alert. Hey, if you think like based on the data that you have, if in the next 6 hours my disk will be full, send me an alert. Or if you think 50, if you're monitoring an API, if you say if 5% of my requests are failing for the last 15 minutes, send me an alert. And things like that. So you can basically monitor whatever you want, applications, infrastructure. Some people monitor their internet speed. Some people monitor their ACT usage, ACT connection usage. And then they write alerts. Okay, if you continue using it this way, by the 25th, your entire data will be over, and things like that. So you can monitor whatever you want, and you can write alerts on it. You can build dashboards using it. So that was basically Prometheus. And give me a second. Yeah, so basically Prometheus collects all this information and it stores it in its own database, and then it queries the database and helps you build dashboards and alerts. So they were rewriting their Prometheus storage engine, and the person who was doing that rewrite came to me and was like, "Okay, I'm working on this. Do you want to work on that?" I was like, "Sure." So I just realized the one thing that I always said was when somebody asked me, "Hey, would you be able to do this?" I was like, "Sure." Like, "Would you be able to build an e-commerce website?" I was like, "Sure." Uh, would you be able to help me with my startup? I was like, "Sure." So every time somebody asked me, "Would you be able to help me with this?" or "Would you be able to do this?" I said, "Sure." That always helps. You can kind of figure things out as you go along. You can all, but like I didn't say, "Sure, let me come and help you with this." I was like, "Sure, I would love to help you with this, but I don't know much." And he was like, "That's fine. I'll teach you all of this." So I started working on this time series database. It's an actual database on disk. We are not using SQL or anything. We're like writing the on disk format of this. And I had no clue what was happening. I did not understand a single thing what was happening in there. That was kind of scary. I did not want to admit that I wasn't able to understand all of this. So I was like, "Okay, I'll do one thing. I'll read each function and I'll write tests for it." Because this person, he was just doing benchmarks and experimentation. Maybe this will work, maybe that will work, to kind of see how they can improve on the old storage engine to the new storage engine. So he was just doing all this experimentation, and things were starting to work finally, and it was getting to a solid state. And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to read each function, and I'm going to try to understand what this function does, and I'm going to write a test case for it." So basically, I started contributing test cases first. It took me a long time for like small functions. They were calling other functions. These functions were calling other functions and stuff. To try to understand that, it took me a long time. And I used to write these small test cases, test the smallest function, then the biggest function, and all of this. Sometimes I sent too many test cases, but like I didn't send test cases for the code quality or the robustness, but rather to understand what's happening. And sometimes I wrote a test case, and he used to review it, and he's like, "No, this function should not behave this way. The output should be something else. Something is wrong with that function." So I slowly started writing tests for the database, and that's how I kind of started understanding. So now this was a complicated database. To be honest, this is the simplest database code that you can read, because now in hindsight, I can say that it's the simplest thing, because there's nothing too complicated in it. But at that time, it was super complicated. It took me, I think, 1 or 2 weeks of doing console.log or like fump.println in Golang to kind of understand this code base. Then I started, like, once I finally understood it, I got selected for GSOC, and then my mentor was like, "Hey, you got selected for GSOC, but why don't you do an internship with us? The company was CoreOS. We'll pay you the same amount as GSOC. The work will be the same as GSOC, but you get to come to Berlin for a couple of weeks on top of all of this. I was like, sure, I want to do this. Like, I want to travel and go to Berlin. So I went to Berlin for I think 3 weeks. I asked them if I can stay one more week. My first time traveling internationally abroad. I have a lot of funny stories from that. And then I spent 3 weeks there. I fell in love with the city. And yeah, like I wanted to kind of spend or like live here for a couple of years. And it took me, I think, 3 years after that to finally get to Berlin. But now finally I'm in Berlin. But anyway, so I did my internship. I worked on this database. We launched Prometheus 2.0. I implemented a couple of small features into the database. I did some performance optimizations and all of that. And then I came back to college. And this was the start of fourth year. And they were teaching us SQL and how to draw UML diagrams and stuff like that. And I'm like, I worked on an actual database on disk, and now I'm drawing UML diagrams, and I need to attend classes, I need to do assignments. All of this was not as much fun as I had contributing to Prometheus. And I was like, okay, sure. Let me like I was really frustrated because I was having a lot of fun in the summer doing this internship, working on Prometheus. Then I went back to college. It's like a huge mind shift change. So yeah, so like I was really frustrated at this point, and then something really nice happened. My college decided to do a gap year system. So my director said, hey, if you want to walk from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, take a break and then come back to college after that, you can now. So he introduced this nice system, gap year system, and I was really frustrated that I could not contribute to Prometheus a lot more. So I was like, okay, let me try to utilize this system and see how things will be. I will cover why I decided to take a semester off, and like if we have time at the end, like what the thought process was. But I basically took a semester off. I took a year off basically to work on Prometheus, contribute to Prometheus. And luckily for me, this was when Prometheus was taking off. A lot of people were looking for conference talks around Prometheus, and I was working on the storage engine of Prometheus. All of this was cool stuff. So the Prometheus team, whenever they got an invite to speak at a conference, they used to be like, hey Gautam, do you want to go do this speaking thing? And I was a student and I was still contributing to Prometheus on the storage engine. So a lot of the conference organizers also wanted to have me as one of the speakers there. So they used to pay for my flights, and I basically traveled to 4 or 5 conferences in a single semester. That was really cool. And this entire semester I was just working on Prometheus and whatever I was interested in. I was still at college. All my friends were attending classes and doing their assignments, and I was working on this crazy thing called Prometheus. Nobody other than me in my college knew what Prometheus was. Everyone except my close friends who spoke to me thought I was like, I went nuts. That like, he's sitting in his room working the entire day for free without attending college by delaying college by a year. Like, what is he doing with his life? That was a funny time, but I had a lot of fun. I was working on all the interesting stuff. I was writing a lot of blog posts. I was talking to a lot of people, and I was giving a lot of conference talks. And I was having so much fun that, maybe I was like, okay, why should I go back to college? So I went to a bunch of conferences and I tried to get some of the companies to hire me. And they basically said, we would love to hire you, but if I wanted to move to Berlin. You want a visa, but for a visa you need a degree. So after talking to a lot of people about like visas and degrees, I realized, shit, I need to finish my degree if I ever want to move abroad to Berlin for a couple of years or something like that. So I came back to college. I said, okay, I took a gap year, but I want to reduce it to a gap semester. And yeah, I did that gap semester thing, and then now I have 1 semester to do 2 semesters worth of coursework. Turns out my professors were really nice. First, they were really impressed that I was doing a lot of this open source work. I was doing a lot of conference talks where I was going on stage and saying, hey, I'm a student of IIT Hyderabad. They had a really good opinion of me. So basically, I'm pretty sure, I mean, my GPA sucked in the last semester because I was doing 2x the coursework. But I'm pretty sure most of them let me pass. because they didn't want to fail me. I'm really thankful to my professors for that. And with a very bad CGPA, I basically graduated on time. And around all of this, while all of this was happening, in one of the conferences, I met Tom Wilkie, who is VP product at Grafana. He was doing his own startup, and I wanted to work from him. And he had basically started his startup with his friend like 2 or 3 months before that. And he was like, I would love to hire you, but I basically don't have a lot of money to pay you. I'm on my savings, but we will work in the future. Fast forward 6 months, he gets acquired by Grafana Labs to work on Prometheus and other stuff. And once he gets acquired, he sends me a message, hey, finally I can hire you. I got acquired by Grafana Labs. So basically, after college, I joined Grafana to continue my work on Prometheus and also to offer a hosted Prometheus service, which is where I started contributing to Cortex. More than 3 years in, I've been doing, I would say 90% of my work that I'm doing is all open source. I used to work a lot on Prometheus, but now I shifted my focus to Cortex, because that's basically where I'm doing most of my work. So yeah, that's like part two of my journey.
Wonderful. That's a lot of detail, and that's like it's taking me some time to process. But other than that, I think that's something that you did not cover in detail as much. And that is, how exactly did you find out about monitoring? Because you said that you were working with that startup that just based that you got to meet from a hackathon. So how did you learn about the concept of monitoring? And because that's not something that normal college students get to know beforehand, right? So that, and then you were also discussing about how you learned about the TSDB and all of that. So those concepts, where do you learn from other than from college? Because I'm sure that you didn't learn most of it from college. So what kind of resources do you use for learning such concepts? Yeah.
That is a really good question. I haven't actually thought about it, but now thinking about it, what I used to do, like, first thing, I used to do a lot of things that people thought were cool. Not cool in college, but like in general, cool in tech. For example, I could have written the plugin for PrestaShop, the Facebook login plugin, but in 2014, even now, but even in 2014, PHP was not a cool language. So it's like Node.js was the cool thing to do. So I was like, I'm gonna do Node.js. And one of the reasons I started looking into Go was because I read a bunch of articles where people from Node.js community, prominent people from Node.js community, decided to move to Golang. They explained the problems with Node.js and JavaScript and why they moved. I kind of could vaguely recognize the problems, but I realized, okay, this Golang thing seems to be cooler than Node.js if all these people, all these cool people are moving there. So one thing I did a lot was read articles. Like, I used to read Hacker News. I used to have like Feedly with all these engineering blogs. One of the reasons I got this internship, like the internship where I implemented Prometheus, was because I was reading all these articles on scale. And one of the reasons I did not like, yes, I was working on this startup, but it was not super. It was not super. I mean, I had a lot of fun implementing all of this, but we were maybe getting like 2 or 3 users a day, and I was reading all these articles on how you can scale to millions of connections. It didn't bother me much, and then I went to my first GopherCon. I think this was back in 2015 or 2016. Yeah, I think I went to a GopherCon in 2016, GopherCon India in Bangalore. uh, and I was like, I could understand maybe 20% of the talks, not because they were on Go, because they were on scale. They were talking about a lot of things, and a lot of those things flew over my head. I had huge imposter syndrome, and I'm like, okay, if I continue doing what I'm doing, I would never be exposed to all of this that's happening, all the cool stuff that excites me personally. This was exciting for me. Other people's preferences differ, and I want to work on this stuff, which is why I applied for this internship. After speaking to my senior, I was telling him all this dilemma, and it's like, come work with us. We have a lot of scale. So I joined this startup. I was doing a lot of Java, but even that wasn't like super interesting for me. So I was like, what can I do on top of my work that can help this company? That's something I continue to do. I think that's like a super nice skill to have. What else? Where else can you add value? And this is not to like one. It helps the company, yes, of course, but also for me personally, I was like, okay, I've been reading all these articles on cloud native or like on Docker and stuff. I can't say go use Docker to this company. They already have their pipelines. They're already established. I'm like, where else can I help? So I started noticing. I wanted to initially build a log aggregation system, basically because they were SSHing into their nodes and getting the logs. Then I looked at Elasticsearch and all of this, and they were logging all kinds of crap. They were logging terabytes and terabytes of data, and I'm like, okay, I can never handle this data yet. Maybe I can do metrics, which is smaller. So like I basically wanted to help them understand what's happening with their systems as a way of doing it the right way according to the articles and engineering blogs that I was reading. And I was like, why? Like, I want to do this monitoring thing here. Instead of customer complaining, you going SSHing, there will be an alert, and the alert will say this particular service or this particular node has an issue, and then you can go into the particular node and SSH into the log SSH and get the logs for that. So they really liked it, and I told them I will continue to do whatever I'm working on, and I will do it on top of that. And funnily enough, I don't know if all software companies are like this, but like when I was doing my internship, I think 2 or 3 hours a day I was playing table tennis, or more. So I was doing a lot of work, but I also had a lot of free time. So I was like, why not use some of this free time to explore Prometheus and learn more? So that's basically how I got into monitoring. And if you ask me how I learned all of these best practices and stuff, I used to read a lot. Like I used to read a lot of articles. I used to maybe understand 20 or 30% of it, but that's fine. I kind of know the terms and stuff. Sadly, just thinking about it, I don't read as much anymore. But like back then in college, I used to read a lot. And coming to TSDB, you asked me how did you understand the concepts there. I didn't. I didn't know anything beforehand. I just basically wrote function by function, test case by test case, try to understand how everything fit in. So yeah, that's basically how I learned the TSDB stuff.
Awesome. Uh, yeah, so I'd like to just highlight a statement that you made there. Where else can you add value? That's a question that you should ask as a contributor to a project or a contributor to a company or something like that. And that's something that's important, I guess, to add value to the company. Okay.
No, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So after talking about all of this, I think some questions that we received earlier would be interesting to get answered right now. So let's start with the first one. So excited for the talk. How does doing open source lead to job opportunities? So I think you answered some of that. And then there's many people in college blindly do competitive coding because there's perception that people get jobs. It would be so good if more students contributed to open source instead. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no. I would say, okay. Here's the thing. I did not sit for placements in my college. It was a conscious decision not to sit for placements, because here's how typically placements work. A large company comes in and they're like, we want to hire 1,000 people or 500 people, 1,500 people across the country from several colleges. So they will hire all these people, and yeah, so they'll hire all the people, and then finally, like, they will be like, okay, we have hired 1,000 people, and then internally, each, like, inside the company, the teams would be like, okay, I want two freshers, I want one fresher, and you're randomly assigned to teams, and you will be like, you could end up working on really cool stuff. I mean, you will work on cool stuff no matter which team you are, but like, sometimes you might end up doing front end, or you might be in an Angular team, or any of these. If you're in college, typically college doesn't prepare you for outside world, and you don't know what Angular is, you don't know what React is, you don't know what Prometheus is, and all of this, which is fine. So you will learn, you'll have a lot of fun. But I've been writing code for a while now, and I knew that okay, I wanted to work on back end systems, and I wanted to work on systems at scale. If I join Microsoft, there's no guarantee for me that I would not be put in a particular team. Like I basically every time a company came, I asked them, can I pick the team? Can I pick the kind of work that I can do? And the answer was always no. The one time it was yes, it didn't work out. So I decided not to sit for placements. And typically, when you're hiring 1,500 people or 500 people, like competitive coding is the easiest way to kind of see, okay, can this person code? Like not back end, not front end. Can this person code? So it's, I would say, like I hate competitive coding. Like absolutely don't enjoy it. If somebody asked me to invert a B tree, I would fail terribly. But like for companies, that is the easiest way they can hire. Like they can set a bar, which doesn't say much about the companies. We don't do competitive coding at Grafana Labs. We assess people in different ways. Um, so yeah, so like I didn't sit for placements because I kind of knew the kind of teams I want to end up in, and if I can't pick those teams, there's no point in that. And I would say open source helps you get a job, but it's a more long term thing. Nowadays, a lot of people are doing open source. Like it became really popular. And like GSOC used to be really cool. I thought, no, doing GSOC, you can get a lot of jobs. Yes and no. Like I spoke to a lot of people who did GSOC. I was saying GSOC is the best thing in the world. They did a lot of GSOC, and all they said was, doing GSOC will give you an interview. You still, in the interview, still need to do competitive coding. And I'm like, oh, did not realize that. So I would say, here's the thing: you can get the job that you want through open source, but there's a but there. You need to spend 6 months doing work, contributing to a project. The thing where people like, okay, GSOC is an amazing program. Absolutely love it. Recommend it to the max. But the biggest issue or problem that I like, or biggest mistake people who do GSOC do is forget about the project and the community after GSOC is over. So you do 3 months of it. You submit a huge, you add a feature, you do your contribution, and then you're done with it. And then you have it on your resume, and then you go to companies and they're like, oh, this person did GSOC, let's give them an interview. So that's going to help, but you're still going to end up doing competitive coding. The way to kind of get jobs via open source is to do long-term contributions, and the way to kind of get the maximum out of GSOC is long-term contribution. So essentially you do 3 months of contributions full-time. I did 3 months of Prometheus, but the reason I kind of like people really wanted to hire me was I did 3 months more of it. I did 6 months of it, and I became the storage maintainer. So I would say if you're contributing to an open source project, consistent contributions for 6 months will make you a maintainer. So when I say consistent contributions, you'll do 3 months of GSOC, or like 3 months your summer you'll spend full time working on a project, and then you go back to college and you don't have that time anymore. But you don't need to work full time on a project to become a maintainer. You need to spend, let's say, 1 or 2 hours every day, 3 hours on the weekend contributing to the project. Now, contributing to the project can be a lot of different things. Whenever an issue is filed, don't fix the issue, write up. Okay, so try to reproduce the issue and do a much better write up. Okay, so this is how you reproduce the issue. These are the files. If anybody wants to fix it, the bug probably exists in this file. That's a contribution. A lot of users ask questions. Answering user questions is a contribution. And on the weekends, try to fix 1 or 2 small issues, or try to understand the code base a little more. So basically, when you consistently are there in the community, the other maintainers will know that, okay, this person is still an active member of the community. They're helping us by answering user questions. They're helping us by cleaning up the issues, triaging the issues, or they're helping by adding small changes. These are all valuable contributions. You will understand the project more. You will understand how users use the project more, and you will know what the latest and greatest in that project is. I'm telling you, you do this for 6 months, you will become a maintainer. Like 3 months of full-time contribution over summer and 3 months of like consistent contributions, you will become a maintainer. And when you say, hey, I maintain this project, I'm one of the maintainers of this project, the conversation is much more different than I contributed to this project last summer. So I would say the way to kind of like get jobs through open source is to basically do 6 months of consistent, it doesn't need to be full time, but 6 months of consistent contributions to an open source project, and be an important part of that project's community. So you can be like, hey, you use Prometheus, oh, I wrote this feature in Prometheus and I still am actively contributing to Prometheus, and then the conversation that you have with that company will be very different. Having, okay, this is okay, now this is great, but like I still have to add a caveat. When the company is really large and they need to hire a lot of people, one-offs, especially for juniors, where okay, let's hire this person because they're a maintainer of Prometheus, is quite rare. Like if you're senior, like these one-off hires will be okay, but like when it's a large organization like Microsoft or Google or anybody over like 10 or 20,000 people, they would most likely not hire you if you don't do competitive coding and you do only open source. Having said that, everyone who's not in this 20,000 like 20,000 plus category, not a huge multinational corporation, would love to hire you if you are a maintainer for one of the popular projects. But again, like 6 months of consistent effort is what you need. With competitive coding, I've seen my friends do it for like 2 or 3 months right before placements and get through, do all those B-tree stuff, but like there is no easy path to finding jobs through open source. I hope I didn't
Great.
discourage you.
Yeah, I think some people would be discouraged, but I think it's an opening. It's eye-opening experience to learn from someone like you about it. Yeah.
I mean, again,
So
this is my perception. I mean, I could be totally wrong. Having said that, like if you do GSOC, don't stop after after 3 months. Please don't stop. You're missing out on a lot more opportunities if you do.
yeah. So, and I think something that's important to like highlight is the statement that you made about contributing consistently for 6 months, to, like at least becoming a maintainer, so that your profile is a bit more highlighted. Yeah. So moving forward, I think there's another question that goes along the same line. So it says, is it possible for a person to work full time as a FOSS contributor without being a part of an open source team at an established company? What are the ways to? No, I think that's not the question. I'm sorry about that. Okay, will you be able to answer that question now?
Give me 1 second. Yes. So essentially, I think here's what you want to do. You want to work on open source, but you don't want to work at a company. So you kind of want to monetize your open source work. That's a good question. It's a really hard question to answer. So okay, first figure out a budget. Like how much do you want to earn from open source? If you want to earn like typical full-time salaries for really good engineers, it's really hard if you don't work for a company. If a company is not paying for your work. But if you kind of want to have enough to sustain so that you can work on other projects or other things, it might be possible. GitHub sponsors is one. Like you can get sponsors. A lot of people I know do trainings. So if you're working on a very popular project and you don't want to work for a company and contribute to that project, you can become a maintainer and then you can offer trainings, and like companies pay a lot of money for these trainings. So that's one way I've seen like people in the Prometheus community kind of not work for a company but still contribute to Prometheus a lot of the time. Or you could form a small company around the project. For example, in the Prometheus community, we have a company called Robust Perception. Brian Brazil, he used to work on Prometheus full time, and then he used to be like, okay, anybody wants any Prometheus consulting, training, whatever, you can come to me. You can be the go-to guy if they want help. And Brian is not the only person. There's a couple of other people who do this. Having said that, for companies to pay you, one, you need to be a maintainer. Like you need to have credibility. You don't need to be a maintainer, but you need to have credibility that this person is actually someone I can pay to for this project. And two, I would say for this to really work, the project needs to be a popular one or a very critical and useful one for a small set of companies. Having said that, I would say working for the company is the easiest and most obvious way. And you can always be like, you can always say, okay, you depend on this project. I'm one of the maintainers for this project, and I will work for you 4 days a week, and on Fridays I will work on this project, and this is going to help you because you depend on this project. So that's like one other way you can kind of get paid for open source, even though the company is not full-time open source.
Great. Yeah. So I think another thing that I'd like to add here is basically very recently there has been this trend that people are like content creators on YouTube who are creating videos about their contributions as well, and then making money from that as a monetary source, and then like Patreon, yeah, and a lot of other avenues for making money. So that might be something that this person might find interesting to use. Okay, another question that I was actually supposed to be asking here is, hey, I have two questions. What do you think about encouraging final year undergrad students to do their capstone projects for an open source organization? And the second question is, what does Google gain from their Summer of Code program, according to you? Yeah.
Both good questions. Final year capstone projects, absolutely. So like I would like, I think this is already happening. Having said that, you need a way to evaluate this. Like, how do you? Okay, so sometimes in some communities in GSOC, somebody works on a feature, they open a PR, and the PR is not yet merged by the time GSOC ends. So how do you evaluate that? Like, you don't know if it will be merged in the future. You don't know if that's enough work. Like, how do you evaluate it is the hard question to ask. Having said that, we had an intern at Grafana Labs who basically worked on Prometheus, and she used that as, I think, one of her projects for credits, her contributions to Prometheus. So I'm seeing this happen more and more. Even in my college, we have a lot of professors pushing open source, and the trend for open, like recognizing relevant open source contributions as credits, is slowly starting to happen. I think it's a great idea. I think more people should do it. But having said that, I don't know the logistics involved in convincing your own college.
Yeah. And I'd also like to add that uh, what about maintaining your own FOSS project, like creating a FOSS project out of your capstone project?
Absolutely do it. I've done this for all my projects. So essentially, don't open source your assignments. My seniors did that. Thank God for them, because usually professors repeat the same questions year and year. But at least once you don't open source your assignments immediately, but like there will always be courses with project work where it will be open-ended project work where you create something new. I would say absolutely open source that if the course and the professor agrees to it, and open source it after that course is over, after 1 year or something like that. Like that would be great. Having okay, yes. So I would say yes, open source it. I've seen this happen a bunch of times in IIT Hyderabad. Instead of like, sometimes the project was so good that not they instead of open sourcing it, they built a company around it. Then they got funded by Y Combinator and all of this. Now they're a big company. All of that happened via a course project, which is really interesting. So I would say, like, if you put a lot of effort into your course project, absolutely open source it, or try to try to use it fruitfully instead of just shelving it or deleting it after the course is over.
Great. Yeah. So another question. Okay, I think we'll take that question later.
So
So
there's a question
yeah,
about what does Google gain from GSOC.
yeah.
So, okay, I have no idea what Google gained from GSOC. Having said that, Google knows that it depends on open source heavily. Google has an open source office, open source programs office, where and they recognize like that basically all of Google is built on open source, on the fundamentals of open source, and they also recognize that by helping open source projects, they are going to help themselves. So Google has not just GSOC. There's like other recognitions. So they kind of figure out which projects they depend on, and who are the most critical people in those projects, and they give funding and grants to those people as well. So that's like Google helps and funds open source in many ways, and GSOC is just one of them. And second thing is it's a huge marketing and PR hit. Like I would say, like if, for hiring a lot of people, like Google has this thing: if you successfully finish your GSOC, you get it in, you get like a second level interview or something. And I'm pretty sure Google hires a lot of the GSOC people. So it's good for hiring, and it's good marketing, it's good PR, and also it's a good way of giving back to the open source community, which I think Google is a decent citizen of the open source community.
Yeah. And okay, so we have this question from live, and it's, how did you come up with the concept for building a high performance software like TSDB? So I think that's something that we already answered, right?
Yeah, to be honest, I did not. I did not come up with the concepts for building a high performance DSDB. Fabian Renards, one of the previous maintainers, like the person who came up with 95% of the TSDB, he is the man behind it. I just happened to be the guy he mentored while building this TSDB. And then while building the TSDB, I learned benchmarking. I've never done benchmarking before. I didn't even know what that was. But like while doing this, while implementing some of the features, I've learned benchmarking. And then over time, as more and more people started using Prometheus, and they were complaining that this is slow or that is slow, I've done a little more benchmarking. I basically learned it on the fly while contributing to TSDB and while maintaining TSDB, but I did not go into TSDB knowing all of this.
Great. Yeah. So now let's move on to the next section, I think. So yeah, would you love to present about your community, the communities that you represent, and give us a few words on mentorship and how that helped accelerate your growth from within the community?
Can do that. I haven't prepared for it. So give me 1 second. Let me close all my tabs. um, yeah, no, let me present about Prometheus. Give me 1 second. So Prometheus is. Can you all see this? You can all see this, right?
Yes, it's loading. Yeah, we can see it.
Yes. So essentially, yeah, Prometheus is this monitoring system which helps you do a lot of monitoring, and alerting. And I would say tens of thousands of companies, small companies to big companies, everyone uses Prometheus. Like literally everyone in the world. Not everyone in the world, but like a lot of people, a lot of Indian companies are using Prometheus. And the really funny thing was, people knew that I was this crazy guy who took a gap semester to work on Prometheus, but they had no clue what Prometheus was. And then they started working at startups and companies and whatever, and then they started using. Then they were like, okay, now we have to use Prometheus, and they're like, oh, I know this one guy from college who worked on Prometheus. So they used to ping me and saying, dude, I'm using Prometheus. And that was a great feeling. So yeah, so essentially Prometheus is a monitoring system that where you can monitor whatever you want. You can graph. There's I'm gonna show you some of the things that we can monitor, and I have no idea where that is. Yes. So if you go to like docs, instrumenting, exporters, and integrations, these are all the different things that you can monitor. You can monitor like your Wi-Fi strength. You can monitor the amount of data you were using, as I was saying before. You can monitor the amount of power. You can monitor humidity, temperature. You can make all these beautiful graphs in Grafana using Prometheus. It's just like if it exists and if it's popular, there's a Prometheus monitoring integration for it. We call that an exporter. Like literally, you can see like the amount of things that you can monitor using Prometheus. Like a lot of companies in the world use this, and we actually have a good yeah, I'm trying to find the GitHub for it. Yes. So if you go to Prometheus, it's all in Golang. I would say it's relatively decent. And we have a bunch of labels where you can start working on the simpler issues. So we have this Hacktoberfest feature label, which is basically all the simpler issues. And you can see that we basically have 20 issues labeled this way, where you can come in and contribute. There should also be like easy, I think help wanted is the other label. And let me unselect Hacktoberfest. And yeah, we have 43 of these. So you can start with Hacktoberfest. And yeah, okay, low hanging fruit was what I was looking at. So you can look at low hanging fruits. You can start with these simple ones, and then you can move to Hacktoberfest, which is also quite simple, but not as simple as low hanging fruit. And after that, you can move to help wanted, which is like, which is, you don't need to be an exported Prometheus to help to solve this, but you need to be better than, you need to know Prometheus and know the structure of the code base and know what's happening. So yeah, so we have a bunch of issues. I would say pick one of those issues, the low hanging fruit ones, and see if somebody's already opened a PR for it. If not, contribute that. So you can see that this has a PR for it, this has a PR for it. Maybe like if you know React, we can like you can contribute, you can fix that and stuff like that. So yeah, so like I would say first run Prometheus. There's lots of good docs on how to run Prometheus. There should be a contributing.md. Yeah, so essentially it's go build Prometheus and /Prometheus. I would do this. Then I would pick an issue, and I would be like, I would put a print statement somewhere and run it, and change that print statement, run it 20 more times, and fix some of the low hanging fruits, and then move to the help wanted. Move to Hacktoberfest, and then move to help wanted. So yeah, so like this is basically how you can contribute to Prometheus. I don't have a good dashboard that I can show you. And there's a huge amount of talks. You can just YouTube Prometheus and you will find a lot of talks on like what Prometheus is and how to contribute to Prometheus.
Nice.
Yeah.
So,
shit.
yeah.
Yeah, like I should have increased the font size. But okay, I'm gonna put it in the chat here. Low hanging fruit is first, and then Hacktoberfest, and then help wanted. Having said that, this is not just for Prometheus. This is a generic thing that you can apply to any open source project. First, run it. Find the easiest issue. Put a lot of print statements. Understand what's happening, which file is it happening in, and what's happening in that file. Send that, and then move to like do a couple of these. Move to the next level of difficulty. Move to the next level of difficulty, and soon, once you start doing this, the maintenance will be. You can ask maintenance, "Hey, I want to work on something, and I want to learn X." And they're going to find you an issue, or they're going to create an issue for you. After you've done a couple of things, a couple of issues, they're going to find an issue and they're going to help you out.
Yes. I think there would be another section that we need to add here, and that is basically about your mentors, people who mentored you. And I think it might be interesting to learn from you what you think, how they helped in your journey and your growth.
That's a good question. I was super lucky. I found mentors at every stage, and one of the luckiest thing for me is I basically spent a lot of time in two communities. One is the reaction commerce community, which is basically one person at that point. Now it's a big project. It got acquired by MailChimp. it's amazing to see that growth. And when I first started contributing to Reaction Commerce, the experience was amazing and positive. And this one person in the US basically helped me a lot, like lot understanding how to code, how to write decent code and stuff like that. Answered all my questions patiently. That was an amazing thing. Like literally went from, oh, I've done a few classes of CS50, I've read a few articles online, to, okay, I've contributed to Reaction Commerce, and I think I can write some decent code. So like those 4 months of mentorship there helped me immensely. And then I started working at companies. Of course, you have a lot of mentors at those companies as well. But like the next big level up for me was working with the Prometheus community. Fabian was amazing. Like I don't know, every interaction with him, he used to blow my mind. Like I was like, I mean, there was a lot of imposter syndrome while contributing to TSTB at the beginning, but he was super kind, and very quickly I was like, okay, it's okay for me to not know all of this. I will figure it out. I don't need to know everything. If anything I don't know, I can immediately ask Fabian, and he was always there to help me. And even in general, the Prometheus community has been like really, really nice and kind. Sometimes I used to be up until 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. in the night just chatting with them about random stuff, not about Prometheus. IRC was a great, like, I don't think I am as active there anymore. But like that was a great place for me to just chat with people and to learn about different things, not just technology and software. And then I joined Grafana Labs. I was lucky to work closely with Tom Wilkie. He's now the VP product at Grafana Labs, but like he was the co-creator of Cortex, and he built companies. And I learned a lot about like distributed systems, scalability, architecture, and also about startups and how to build a startup and all of that from him. I would say like good mentors have been, I've been lucky to, one, find them everywhere, and two, like they've been a constant in my life, like one person after the other. And now I can look at my manager or like Marco in my team, who are like really, really good mentors. And whenever I'm stuck with something nowadays, like asking technical questions, that's actually part of work. But like, what do I do 6 months later, what do I do 12 months later? I have a lot of different people I can ask that question to, who I can call mentors. And having those people really, really, really helps. And yeah, no, I would say like I mentored a couple of people. I still am mentoring a couple of people. Like after GSOC, I became a GSOC mentor, and I started mentoring one of the GSOC students. He was also from my college. We worked together before, but yeah, like he did some really good work, and I started mentoring him for TSDB. And one of the things that I did right was every time he used to ask me a question, I used to make him ask it in the Prometheus IRC, so that one, other people also know that okay, Ganesh is working on this, and two, he gets to interact with all these other people. Um like yeah, I've done some mentoring, and one thing I realized is like the best kind of mentees are people who take action, who are proactive, like who do a lot of work before they come and ask you questions, which is what I've been saying. Struggle with something for 30 minutes before you ask them questions. That helps you a lot. That helps you kind of rule out A, B, and C, which are the obvious ones, and then you will kind of understand why the suggested way is the way to do it, why the other ways will fail. Yeah, so I don't know what else to add there.
Great. So, okay, I think take some questions now, and there's one that just came up through a form, and that is, as a maintainer and developer, even your GitHub says your daily contribution count. Can you please share your daily routine and also how you are able to work on multiple projects in parallel?
That is a good question. Okay, two things. When I was in college, or like when I was doing my internship, I had a few things that I needed to implement according to my GSOC proposal. So I was working on them. It was just Prometheus, and Then I had a summer. I mean, I had a semester to do whatever I wanted with Prometheus, and basically, I was picking up all the TSDB issues because I was one of the maintainers and I felt some ownership. I was picking up interesting issues that I wanted to explore because nobody's paying me to do anything, so I can do whatever I wanted. So that was great. And issues that users were reporting, like so I was basically, I would say, when I was doing my gap semester, I was just working on whatever I felt was the most interesting thing. And there's a lot of interesting things to explore in Prometheus, like a lot of different areas. And then I just joined Grafana Labs. And at Grafana Labs, my work was to continue contributing to Prometheus, but also help build hosted Prometheus. So in the initial days, I used to maybe spend 2 days out of a week working on Prometheus, just doing whatever interesting stuff I was doing. But turns out you can't just do interesting stuff when you're doing 2 days out of a week. So I was like fixing TSTB issues, answering user questions, fixing any of the newer issues being reported. And then the rest 3 days, I used to work on launching Cortex and profiling Cortex and looking at issues in Cortex and fixing those. Nowadays, I'm mostly focused on Cortex and hosted Prometheus, and we run a platform that I would say thousands of customers are using, and we have a lot of data coming in, and these customers raise a bunch of issues, or we have a bunch of roadmap items that we want to add to our service, and I basically work on those in Cortex. Now, the good thing is Cortex depends on Prometheus and other Prometheus components like Alert Manager, which means some of the times when I want to improve Cortex, I have to go and improve Prometheus. So that's basically where all of this comes in. I wouldn't say like I have a good routine. I just wake up and see what's burning or what's on fire or what's on my to-do list, and I work on that. Just happens, I mean, just so that whatever I'm supposed to work on happens to be also open source. That's a huge benefit.
Great. Yeah. So you were earlier sharing with us that you like to bake as well, and then that you also do some cycling. So would you like to share about how you take your mind off things and uh, get
Yeah,
into
no,
the
that's a good question. I have this really funny story with me and cycling. So when I say, I used to hang out with people in the Prometheus community on chat. We have some crazy people there, and one of them, Ben, posts a lot of cycling stuff. Uh, and at one point, he posts like this 160 km or 200 km cycling ride that they did. Like they cycled 200 kilometers in a single day. And I was like, what the hell? Like, are these humans or are these like mutants? I was like blown away. And he was like, yeah, we just cycled all the way down for 200 kilometers. Then we got bored. So then we took the train back. And he was very chill about it. It's like, oh, wow, this is insane. And in Berlin, I was going to do like a walking tour of the city. Like, you can go to on these tours with a tour guide and stuff. And one of them suggested, hey, don't do a walking tour, do a cycling tour. And I was like, okay, because you spend more time looking at things rather than getting to places if you're cycling around. So I haven't cycled for, I don't know, at that point 6 or 7 years, and then I jumped on a cycle and I absolutely loved it. The weather was a nice 18 degrees in summer. It wasn't raining, it was nice and pleasant, and this cycle had gears. I never basically had a gear cycle. I was like, okay, this is amazing. So this 1 hour tour was over, and then I signed up for another tour just so that I can continue cycling. I really liked it so much that I decided to try what Ben does, which is basically cycle long distance. I did it for 2 hours. I did not feel, I mean, there was a lot of sightseeing also in picture, so there are a lot of breaks. I did not feel tired. I'm like, okay, next weekend, I'm gonna do some crazy thing. So I did 35 or 40 kilometers of cycling the next weekend. Absolutely loved it. Got fever, got body pains, and had to skip office for a day. But I really enjoyed it. So that was it. That was done. I was doing 2 semesters in one, also contributing to Prometheus, so doing too much work. And then college was over. I graduated, and I was working too much. And then I started working at Grafana Labs, and people noticed that I was working too much. They were like, I don't know which time zone Gautam works in, because in the early morning I was working, and late at night I was working. So my manager noticed that, and he was like, "Dude, you need to have a hobby." And I'm like, "Yeah, Netflix is my hobby." And started laughing, and he's like, "You need to have a hobby that doesn't involve a screen." So he was very strict about it. I think he even stopped reviewing my PRs until I got a hobby. So I went and bought a cycle, a gear cycle. I was super excited. I woke up at 5 a.m. the next day so that I can go cycling. And 10 minutes into this cycling, I crashed and broke my hand. I had to basically wear a thing for like I think 6 weeks or 8 weeks. That sucked. But I really enjoyed cycling, and I continued to cycle. And I got into this thing back in India where early morning I used to wake up 5:30, get 30 kilometers cycling in, come back, have breakfast, sleep, have lunch, and work 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. And on weekends do 100 kilometers of cycling. Yeah. So basically, in Vizag, there's this nice 30 kilometers stretch of the beach, right by the beach. Early morning 5:30, nobody's on that stretch. It goes like it ends at RK Beach, but like it goes till Beemily, and it's a beautiful stretch at 5:30 in the morning. Fresh air. It's an amazing way to start the day. And yeah, I did a lot of cycling in Vizag, had a really nice routine. Here, I did a bunch of cycling in the summer. I also cycled from Berlin to Stockholm, 1100 kilometers in 10 days or something like that. So yeah, I really enjoy cycling, but now it's like 2 degrees, 3 degrees, and if you cycle in 2 degrees, 3 degrees, it's not as fun. So now I needed a hobby, so I was working too much again. Now that I don't have any option, everything outside is closed. We are in lockdown. It's really cold to even go outside, so I'm basically sitting in this computer chair. I bought a really comfortable chair all the time, and I was frustrated. So I was like, okay, what do I want to pick up as a hobby that doesn't involve a screen? And I realized I like baking, and I needed an excuse to get out of the house. So I started delivering bread for free. So when you bake your own bread, it's actually very inexpensive to bake your own bread. So it's like, okay, I will start a bread delivery service. And I told all my friends, if you want bread, just tell me. I'll bake you a surprise bread, because I bought a book on bread baking. And I was trying different recipes. I told them, if you order today, you'll get fresh bread tomorrow. Having said that, you cannot decide what bread it is. So there's an entire book with different kinds of breads and recipes that I'm trying out. So that's basically what I'm doing. um, Also started baking a lot of pizza, getting fat, but yeah, no, so that's something that's really fun. Baking bread, you do something with your hands. It needs a lot of patience. I will link you to the book. It's called The Bread Baker's Apprentice. And yeah, no, I've been having a lot of fun that way. And spring is coming, which means it will be warm enough to cycle again, and I'm looking forward to that.
Great. I think we can have similar hobbies from this, because I also like to cycle on the west coast of India. You do it on the east coast, I do it on the west coast in Kochi. And yeah, even baking is something that I have caught on to very late, of very late, because of my dad. And yeah, I think that's important as a developer or as a contributor, to also have some side hobbies, and to like, is there something that you do to get to interact with your community, like having similar hobbies and having some conversations other than the contribution stuff?
Okay, that's a good question. It's hilarious, right? So I was working remote from Vizag, and turns out all the people that I knew in Vizag were either in Hyderabad or in Bangalore. And then I used to travel to Bangalore and Hyderabad frequently. And then I noticed all the friends that I had, they were hanging out with their office mates. And then it quickly dawned on me that in India, your social circle after you start working is typically the friends you meet in the office. I have no such friends, which was kind of interesting. And then I found cycling, and I started cycling, and then I found other cyclists, other crazy cyclists doing 50 or 60 kilometers every single day on the same path. And then we started doing long rides on the weekends. And then we were like, okay, every day 30 kilometers, I will cycle with you. So I had a group of 4 or 5 people. We always used to meet in front of Geetham, Vizag at like 6 a.m. And then we used to cycle every single day. That's how basically this one hobby made me friends back in Vizag while working remote and not having office mates. So, especially in the pandemic, a lot of people probably moved back to your parents' place or hometowns. Find people like outside tech through a hobby. It's like if you have a hobby, finding people outside tech, getting diverse views, getting having diverse friends is very easy. So I would say first find hobbies that don't involve a screen. Very important to disconnect. Very soothing. I'm telling you, before cycling, I used to work a lot. After cycling, I used to have strict timings. I used to work 7 or 8 hours a day, far more productive. Um, had much more clarity of mind, far more relaxed. I wasn't worried about checking my phone all the time. I had a good set of friends. I was hanging out with every single day, a passion that we all shared. So I would say find good hobbies. Board gaming is a really good hobby. Bangalore has a really good board gaming culture, and even like Kochi, and I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of crazy nerds all doing board gamings. And yeah,
Yeah, there are.
yeah, no. So I would say like yeah, like I know it's important to write code. I know it's important to like go ahead in your career, but to be sustainable, you need to disconnect. And I would also say find non-technical friends, uh, not just people who are all into software. And a good way to find non-technical friends, having non-technical friends like opens up your mind to a lot of in a lot of different ways. And a good way to find non-technical friends is through like hobbies that don't involve a screen.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a question from Anand in chat.
Writing software is easy, building communities is hard. What are your recommendations for developers who are already doing their open source projects to make their project friendly for others to come contribute and build a community? This is a good question. I have a KubeCon talk coming up on how Cortex kind of went from 1 or 2% vendor focused project to a proper community adopted by a lot of companies. First thing is spend 30% of the time on the community. Literally, like we launched Tempo, and like one of the things was like we wanted to ship a lot of features, but like we were like Tom was very clear, spend a significant chunk of the time on community. Building a community means first finding adoption, right? Write blog posts, give conference talks, and all of this. And the second step is be very active and very accessible to your community. Run weekly office hours where anybody can come to you with questions. Run a bi-weekly or monthly like community call. So I would tell you this, like the first time you do this office hours, first time you do this community, somebody asks a question, you answer the question right then and there, and then they go away. Now this is great, they had a great experience, but having said that, if somebody else has the same question and they Google it, they won't find the answer on Google. So they have to come back and they have to ask the same question again. And you answer the same question again. And this happens and happens and happens. It's not great. The best way to kind of answer questions is a forum. Have a Google groups, or like have a Discord or anything. But now the problem is to post in Google groups or post on Discord, it takes time. You have to sign up for an account, and they post it, and then you get an email, and then you answer it a few hours later. They are happy. In the future, if people have the same problem, they can Google it, and they will find the answer right there on Google. They click on the Discord link or Google Groups link, they'll see the answer, and you don't need to answer the same question again. So this is a perfect ideal flow of how do you kind of answer questions. Having said that, when you're starting out, have a very accessible chat. Forget about this forum until you're big, because you want to make sure the people who interact with you and your community have the best experience possible, and their questions are answered within 24 hours with the maximum detail possible. So I would say in the beginning, spend 30% on building a community, 70% on coding and features. Give a lot of conference talk, do a lot of outreach. Uh, and once you start building the community, you'll see that more and more people will be answering questions, not just you. Like people who had a great experience interacting with their community will want to give it forward. Somebody who's using a project will want to give it forward. So Then as more and more people start interacting, you can then start taking a step back, and focusing on other things, or building adoption, or like specific things. But like in the beginning, you launch and spend 30% on building a community. So one thing I do want to highlight, I just didn't highlight, a lot of things changed for me uh, after I started going to conferences, speaking at them or attending them. A lot of things, like conferences don't happen anymore because of COVID, which kind of sucks. But if you're a student, especially if you're contributing to open source, and if you're a student, apply for conference talks, or apply for student scholarships. Attend conferences. They will help you meet a lot of potential people in the community. Second, you will see a lot of people who are using the projects that you're contributing to. And so maybe you're contributing to Prometheus. So if you go to like KubeCon or PromCon, or you see like, okay, there's 25 companies that are using Prometheus at scale. And then you can go to them and say, hey, I contribute to Prometheus and this particular feature I wrote. They would be more than like, they would be interested in hiring you. They would be interested in talking to you. Give conference talks. Like I gave conference talks 2 or 3 years later. Also, people ping me about potentials, about hiring, or like just chatting with me about that conference talk I gave. Like conferences change the game, and it's very like conferences become more accessible if you're doing open source. So I would say you did GSOC. Give a conference talk or a meetup talk or somewhere, like start talking, start attending conferences, start talking to people at conferences. It's really hard to go up to strangers and start a conversation. But like start doing that, put yourself out there, and that will help you in your career a lot. I mean, conferences changed the game for me. Yeah.
Yes. As someone who has also worked with CNCF, I think I'd always say go for KubeCon and Cloud Native Con, and one is happening in like May, and I have shared the link for that. So if anyone's interested, there are also scholarship opportunities to participate. So please check that out. Yeah. Now let's get back to Prometheus. I think we need to cover one important part of Prometheus, and that is for a contributor. How you talked about Prometheus as a from the user's endpoint. From the contributor's endpoint, a new contributor, you also told us about finding out issues, where to get started with. But I think we also need to cover how, as a new contributor, you can learn the concepts that are necessary to understand, and how to get started with conversations about those concepts. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so here's the thing. Monitoring is very critical. It's like tests in code. You probably won't like. When I was in college, I never kind of understood it. Then I worked in a real company, and then some customer complains that something was wrong, and then then that is escalated through some other guy, and then somebody is called up and said, hey, this thing is burning, why didn't we know about it? So I felt that this entire process of like customers telling you there's a problem is a bad experience for the customer. It's a bad experience for the developer if your manager is calling you and telling you, hey, that's a problem. So like monitoring, if you're running a serious service, a solution, you need to know if it's up, and when it's not performing great, you need to notice it before your customer notices it. So then your website might be down, you can chat with the community. But the first thing I want you to do is, one, run it. This is applicable to any open source project. Run the project, pick a low hanging fruit, try to understand what's happening there, and spend 1 or 2 hours doing that. And then after you spend that time, jump onto whatever community channel they're using and say, hey, my name is X, I want to contribute to Prometheus, and I've been trying to solve this particular issue, and these are the approaches that I've tried. Can someone help me? So I would like, one thing that really, really helps maintainers is if you put some effort in first before reaching out. It's a nice feeling, and we will definitely jump immediately and we'll try to help you. So I would say, yeah, like with Prometheus, pick a low hanging fruit, pick a Hacktoberfest issue, and try to fix it. It won't be trivial. You will get stuck, but try to fix it for a couple of hours and then start the conversation. Hey, introduce yourself, say everything that you've tried and that you're stuck there and what to try next. And after fixing a couple of issues and saying, hey, I've fixed these issues, I want to go to the next level. I want to try something a little more difficult. Which issue would you suggest? So that would also help.
Yes, I think that was really helpful to know about this flow that you think would be interesting for people to try out. Okay, so I think before we end our discussion today and our session, as you promised to talk about how you took the decision of taking a semester off. So maybe for the students out there who are like in that dilemma, you could explain a bit more about that.
So yeah, so I wanted to okay, so good question. So the semester off is probably one of the best decisions I've taken. I had a junior who wanted to take a year off. Everyone was saying no after after I graduated. Everyone was saying no, and he contacted me and saying, "Okay, I want to do this," and I'm like, "Yes, do this," and that helped him a lot as well. So one, not every college supports this. Your college has to be kind of crazy to do this, and then you have to be crazier for this to work. But for me, the thought process was, I've done an internship. The people at the internship actually really liked me, and they wanted me to come work there full time. So I reached out to them and said, "Hey, if I don't have a degree, can I work for you?" And I really enjoyed my work at that company. So they're like, "Yeah, we don't care about degrees and stuff. You can come work for us." So I was like, "Okay, if everything else goes really bad, I have a job." The second item is, I was seeing Prometheus take off. I spoke to a couple of mentors, and I was like, okay, I was also fairly sure that I can find a job with Prometheus. I was like, okay. I mean, I wasn't 100% sure. Like, it was not a guarantee like this other job that I had, but I was fairly sure that okay, I can also find a job in the Prometheus community. And I was having a lot of fun, and I wanted to learn more about distributed systems and time series databases and like actual Prometheus stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna take this decision. And I also spoke to my parents, and I wouldn't say my parents are really rich, but it's okay for me if I just go home and stay there for 6 months to a year while figuring out stuff. Like, I don't need to start earning money right after graduation. I did not have that pressure. So that was like the huge benefit that I had. So one, I had backups. I was taking a risk. This could harm my career really badly, but I had backups and I kind of hedged that risk. And I was like, okay, I'm going to spend the next 6 months working on this, and I'm gonna do a lot of cool stuff that everyone wants to hire me. So that was like the kind of decision I made. And I was working on storage systems, and I was kind of confident that if I did this for 6 more months, that people would want to hire me. So that was the bet I kind of made. That was a risk I took, and I was like, it was a risk, but like I had a backup job ready whenever if things didn't go the way I planned them to be. And then I went to a bunch of conferences, kind of overconfident that I'll get hired. And then everyone was like, you're in India, we're in the US, we don't do remote. This was pre-COVID, we don't do remote. We don't think 12 and a half hours of time zone difference would work. You would need to move countries, and for that you need a degree. So that's when I was like, shit, I need a degree. But yeah, if your college allows you to do that, and if you can take that, if you can basically delay of getting a salary for 6 months to a year, and if you find something that you're really passionate about that you want to explore, take that. Like, literally taking a semester off to explore a lot more in the middle of college. In the middle of college would help a lot. Yeah. So that's basically my thought process around taking a semester off.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. I think we are at the limit right now with our time. So we'll drop off from the live stream, and then we'll have some off stream discussions here with everyone else who has joined us. So would you like to do that?
Maybe also put one more link to the BBB session in the live stream chat if people want to join us on the live stream. Yeah.
Yes. So we'll do that. So before we do that, I need to say say that we are all filled with gratitude to have you here sharing your experiences and then making this event such a success. So thank you for joining us today.
No, I really enjoyed this session. And no, thank you for having me as the first person to kick off first commit. And I'm really excited about all that FOSS United is doing to increase FOSS in India. And hopefully I'll get more active in the future once I have a little more time.
Great. Thank you for joining us.